The spare key in the fern pot. I found the key in the dirt where we kept the fern that refuses to die. It was wrapped in plastic and tied with a strip of red ribbon, the kind you cut off a bouquet when you're trying to pretend the flowers chose you. I felt it before I saw it, metal against my knuckle while I pressed soil around a new frond. The teeth were shallow and new. The head was stamped with the name of our building and a number that wasn't ours. I wiped it on my shirt, and the red ribbon left a wet blush. Our living room smelled like potting soil and the brand of candles she'd started buying lately. A clean mineral scent that made the windows seem more honest than they were. We adopted the fern from a neighbor who moved away and left it in the hall like a green orphan. Mara said a living thing should never learn loneliness from a hallway, so we brought it in. She watered it with the same authority she brought to everything: recipes, apologies, the way she smoothed sheets. She liked flat cotton, said it felt like respect. On Sundays, I ironed pillowcases while she made coffee strong enough to decide for us. We slept with her knee hooked behind my thigh, a tether I didn't know how much I trusted until I did. The key fit my palm like it knew me, which is the problem with objects. They don't care who holds them. I turned it over while the sink hissed and the kettle gathered itself for a small scream. Our spare key lives in a magnetic box under the mailbox where everyone in the building keeps theirs like a pact. This was not that key. It had never been under the mailbox. Someone had chosen the fern for privacy and sentiment, and I disliked the thought that a plant I'd kept alive had learned a secret I hadn't. I didn't say anything when she came home. She had the brightness of a person who stepped from hot air into cool. Her hair, still pinned, had that slightly crooked look that my hands used to fix. "You smell like the lobby at the Orpheum," I said, trying to make it light. She grinned, guilty and charming. "Met with the theater team," she said. "Brand placement. You know how it is, everything wants a cameo." She toed off her shoes and set them parallel, precise. I slipped the key into my pocket and told myself I would ask in a language that didn't accuse. It had not started with a key. It started with sound. Her phone learned a new alert, two bright notes like a bell in a smaller house. It chimed at 12:09 and 12:12 and made our bedroom into a place that belonged to timing. She shut it off with a thumb and kissed my shoulder, apologizing to skin instead of me. Then scent changed. Rosemary traded itself for something with a stone at the center. The apartment wore it in corners, in the wool of her coat, in the place where she keeps lip balm and receipts and old ticket stubs, as if history were a pocket-sized thing. I became helpful instead of brave. I trimmed the fern and learned where every leaf leaned for light. I reorganized the cupboard where the mugs live, heavy on the left and nervous ones in the back. I downloaded bank statements like a person auditioning for adulthood. And then I found the spare key with its red ribbon, and the quiet I'd been cultivating grew teeth. The next afternoon, I took a walk to where the ribbon wanted me to go. The number stamped on the key said 503, a corner of our building that overlooks the water and pretends it's a ship. The hallway smelled like paint and someone else's dinner. I palmed the key like a bad habit and stood at the door with the ribbon in my pocket. I told myself I was looking for a draft, a sound, a reason to laugh at my panic. I slid the key into the lock and felt the yes of engineered metal. I didn't turn it. I stood there while my breath fogged in my own face. Then I stepped back and left the ribbon on the doormat like a line I wasn't going to cross tonight. We met at a rooftop screening the summer the city believed in itself. She laughed at the wrong parts and I laughed because she did. I offered her a warm beer and she took it like a dare, then made a face and stole half of mine instead. Later, when the projector coughed and the image froze, she leaned into me and whispered, "I prefer sound to moving pictures." And it felt like a confession even though it was. In bed a month later, she told me to keep still while she memorized my shoulder with her mouth, and I obeyed as if obedience were proof. We were good at inventing rituals. We were better at believing they were permanent. I took the key to the front desk and asked the manager if the building had replaced locks recently. He was a soft man with a private sadness around the mouth. 503 requested a duplicate last month, he said, typing louder than he needed to. New tenant, I asked, though I knew the answer was no. Existing, he said, signed the form with a flourish. He smiled at the flourish like it had told him a joke. Do you know who lives there? I asked. He looked at me over his glasses and did not answer. The computer hummed. The fern's dirt under my fingernails itched like guilt. At home, I made dinner as if salt were a strategy. Mara came in late with rain on the backs of her hands. She saw the place mats, the ones we never use unless we're pretending, and kissed me with accuracy. Her mouth tasted like mint and something else, something brighter. We ate like a couple rehearsing kindness. After, she stood behind me at the sink and pressed her forehead to the space between my shoulders, her breath turning my shirt damp. It had always been my favorite mercy. Remember Odessa? She murmured. The curtain that wouldn't close. I remembered everything. The way the lamp made her collarbone glow, the angle of her thigh when she climbed over me, the soft noise she made when I reached the place her breath turned to heat. I wanted to tell her she could keep all the curtains open and I wouldn't look away. Instead, I started drying a plate because I couldn't think of a better plan. I'm not honest about timing usually, but I'll tell you this. The first time I followed her, it didn't feel like following. It felt like making sure gravity still worked. She said she had to check on a set at the Orpheum and would be late. I said I needed to clear my head and pretended we were both talking about weather. The theater's alley door is where the truth collects. Every love I've ever known has had an alley door. She arrived with her hair in a knot and her mouth set to brave. A man met her there, careful shoulders and a navy coat that didn't apologize for being expensive. He handed her a paper cup. She laughed, dropped her head, touched his wrist, a choreography that had learned itself. I bought a rush ticket from a woman with a face like a warning and slid into the back row. The play was about a man who wants to be forgiven, and a woman who ends up forgiving herself instead. The scene with the bedside table came in the second act, a bottle of scent with its name in script, and a wrist extended like a key. The audience inhaled on cue, all of us animals pretending to be shoppers. I left before the curtain call and stood in the alley where the rain tried to convince old posters to move. They came out under an awning, traded words I couldn't hear, then followed the same script I'd seen in every city. Hand at the small of her back, a decision made without a jury. I did not storm. I thought about storms and chose a list. A lawyer whose office lives above a cobbler asked me whether I wanted an outcome or a scene. Outcome, I said, because future me deserves fewer performances. She nodded and told me boring things that feel like rescue when you need them. Dates, doors, dollars. Witnesses, not heroes. No literature by text. Don't set fire to the house you're leaving. Smoke clings. I invited her sister to dinner and our friend Nico, who is loyal to the part of me that believes in exits. I made a roast to perfume the room with certainty. At 8, Mara texted to say she was wrapping up. At 8:26 she arrived with a hoodie tied around her waist that I hadn't seen before, a theater logo printed small like a confession. She held up a new candle, mineral, sky like an offering, and kissed my cheek too correctly. We ate. Laughter borrowed our voices. When the plates were cleared, I set the red ribbon on the table and then the key on top of it, teeth shining, number stamped like a dare. "What's that?" she asked, and I loved her for making the question sound like a plan. "Found in the fern," I said. "A plant can't consent to keeping secrets." Nico made a sound people make when the glass they're holding might become a weapon. Her sister's eyes went shiny the way windows do before rain. "We should talk privately," Mara said with the calm of people who can compartmentalize mercy. "We will," I said, "but I need witnesses that I still live here." They left. The apartment resized itself. She sat and tipped the key so the light fell into the grooves. "I hid it there because I like how you take care of boring things," she said. "I thought the key would borrow your reliability." She laughed once and it hurt more than crying. "I sound ridiculous." "Is he married?" I asked, not because I wanted the man punished, but because I needed the math. "Separating," she said. "A girl, 7. The number landed between us like a perishable thing. "Do you love him?" I asked, knowing the word behaves badly under cross-examination. She stared at the ceiling and then returned to me. "I love that he met me at full volume and didn't look away," she said. "With you I keep making room for silence and calling it grace." "We're going to separate," I told her, and the sentence did what doors do when they've been asking to be closed. She nodded, shoulders dropping the weight of a lie they were never designed to carry. "Do you want me to go now?" she asked. "I want you to stop standing in 2 rooms," I said. "Pick the one you can breathe in. I'll take the other." She packed fast. People think leaving is a montage. It's a sprint you've been training for in secret. She took a sweater, 2 charging cables, the hoodie, and the candle. She left the fern. At the door she reached for my wrist with the old code thumb press release and then withdrew, the exact balance of kindness and cruelty. "I was happy," she said, "and greedy and afraid." "You were a person," I said. "So am I." He wrote to me once from a polite address that smelled like HR. He used words like respect and transition, and asked if we could be gentlemen about it, which made me want to send him the key on a chain with a note that read, "Learn to knock." I forwarded the message to my lawyer and to Nico, who wrote back, "Block, breathe, boil water." I boiled pasta and the steam fogged the window, and the night decided to stop performing. The days after were a kind of arithmetic that made hurt behave. Accounts moved, joint card paused, passwords changed from private jokes to sentences about bridges that sway and still hold. I ironed pillowcases because flat cotton still felt like respect, only this time it was for me. I slept diagonal. The bed learned my shape without needing to apologize. Once, because stories prefer to tidy themselves, I climbed to the 5th floor and stood outside 503. The key was warm in my pocket, ribbon cut clean. I touched the metal, thought of the fern, and realized the only door I needed to open was mine. I left the key at the desk with the manager who smiles at flourishes. "Found," I said. He nodded like a priest at a confession that doesn't require penance. Mara texted on a Wednesday because that's when people try to be better without ceremony. "Thank you for not making me the worst thing I did," she wrote. I answered, "Thank you for not asking me to keep the light on in 2 rooms." She sent a photo of a sublet with a window full of sky and a plant failing with dignity. I sent a photo of the fern thriving. We didn't flirt. We traded weather reports until the habit dissolved. Sometimes desire still knocks, uninvited and right on time. It arrives as warmth in the throat, as the memory of her knee hooking my leg and the soft vowel she made when I touched the place where breath becomes heat. I let it visit and then leave, like weather through a city that has learned its drains. I don't punish it. It never did anything but try. I still keep the fern on the table where light reaches late. New fronds unwrap like careful green fists. The soil holds small stones I don't remember adding. When I water it, I press the surface down with my fingers, firming what can be firmed. The ribbon sits in the drawer with the spare batteries and the measuring tape, unknotted now, just color. Some symbols deserve demotion. They behave better lower in the stack. The last time I saw her was in the lobby, where the floor knows what it means to hold weight. She wore the coat I bought the winter we practiced austerity and looked like someone who had been forgiven by sleep. She handed me a book with an inscription I won't repeat and asked about the fern like a person who has learned to ask without demanding answers. "It's alive," I said. "So am I." We smiled like neighbors. She touched the edge of the table where the male sits and didn't press my wrist. The decree arrived on thick paper that made a sound when I opened it. I folded it and set it under the tray with the keys to the mailbox and the bike lock and the little safe where I keep my passport. I put fresh sheets on the bed and let my palms iron what I could. I opened the window an inch and let the city speak at its usual volume. The apartment exhaled. I stood in the doorway and felt the room take my shape. The latch caught on the first try. The kettle shivered into its small scream. I poured water over coffee, and the steam reached my face like a familiar, non-negotiable truth. If I wake in the night, I press my thumb to my wrist and listen for the code I once mistook for rescue. All I hear is pulse saying here, here, here. It's enough. I water the fern. I rinse 2 cups even if I only used 1. I put the ribbon back in the drawer and close it softly, not to hide anything, but because closing things gently is the kind of person I want to be when no one is taking notes.